Hey y'all, it's me. It's your girl, and you already know. Like, share, and subscribe. What's up, real deal? How y'all doing today? It's hot, man. I went to work today, and I like to burn up out there. It's just hot. It's too hot. But let's talk, okay? Okay. Let's do this. Let's go and continue with where I left out before I went to work. Henry Dinkins, day 10 trial continues with circumstances. Evidence, that's what I think. Okay. So let's go from here. And look at that face. Oh, he's just nonchalant.
Come forward. Raise your right hand. Do you sort of tell the truth about the truth?
I do.
Please have a seat.
Thank you, sir.
Can you state and spell your record?
That's Michael Tate, spelled Michaeltate.
And how are you currently employed?
I'm a criminalist with the Iowa Department of Public Safety, Division of Criminal Investigation, Criminalistics Laboratory.
In the, you said criminalistics laboratory?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you work with a certain department within the DCI crime laboratory?
I'm assigned to the Firearms and Toolmark section of the laboratory.
And how long have you worked in the firearm and toolmark section of the DCI crime lab?
Unofficially, I started working with them late 2007. Officially, I transferred in April of 2015.
How long in total have you worked for the DCI crime lab?
Next month will be finished up by 34 years.
And you've alluded to this, but have you worked in different departments?
Measured its weight. And then when a bullet is fired out of a rifled barrel, which most of the things we have these days are, with the exception of shotguns, the rifling actually will leave marks behind on the bullet jacket or the outside of the bullet. It can have enough detail to allow us to make an identification of a bullet back to a test fire from a particular gun. But in the least ways, it gives us ideas by the widths of the impressions on the what we call the bearing surfaces. We can plug that into a database, which is that list on the second page, and get an idea of what the possible guns were that could have done it. It's not an all-inclusive list, but it gives us a start, and it's an investigative item for departments.
So essentially, you're trying to look at the different marks, the weight, the things that you can visibly see on these bullets to try to determine if you can determine what type of firearm this bullet would have been fired from.
Yes.
Now, are you able to make that determination by just looking at a bullet itself?
There is one particular type of firearm that's currently being made. That is the Generation 5 Glocks that do happen to make they have a land and groove impressions that I have not seen in any other firearm. And if I were to see that, I could tell you, we would narrow it down to that kind of firearm, a Glock Generation 5. But that's about the only one I can tell you about.
So
That's so definitively.
for all other bullets then that don't show the same class characteristics consistent with being fired from a Gen 5 Glock, what would you need in order to actually make a determination about what type of firearm those bullets came from?
The weight gives me an idea. The diameter also adds to that. And then the width of the land and groove impressions are the final components. And the number of them, I'm sorry.
Would you need a known gun in order to make some of those comparisons as well?
Well, if you want to make an identification to it, yes.
Okay.
They step back from.
So how does that then work when you have a potentially known firearm?
Well, I'm assuming you're meaning that somebody has presented me with a firearm as well to work with. In that case, once I go through checking it through, I can test fire it, collect the bullets and the cartridge cases that have come to me as part of the test firing, and use them to compare against the unknowns. Say, for instance, I was presented with a revolver. I could compare them against, as I recall, 17 and 18 on this list. 4 had no useful information for me. I could have tried to use 17 or 18, but unfortunately, corrosion had done its dirty work and damaged it beyond my ability to make an identification.
So let's talk about then the results from just your visual examination of these particular bullets. And again, referring to your report, what were you able to determine about just their general class characteristics?
From experience, it looked like those bullets had probably been fired from a .38 caliber, which includes .357 Magnum, .38 Smith & Wesson, 9mm. That's all under the .38 caliber. But from its bullet weight, it was fairly typical for a .38 Special. The land and groove impressions, it was a 6 right, if I recall. That's fairly common. That doesn't help at all, really, when it comes right down to it. But had there been individual detail that was visible in those impressions, then they would have been useful for going back and making a comparison and possibly an identification to an unknown or to a turned-in firearm.
Now, just in comparing the bullets to each other, did you make any observations about whether the markings were consistent with just each other?
Yes, the 3 of them looked like they probably came from the same firearm.
And what were your findings in regards to that?
Well, I didn't have anything to identify them definitely to each other. However, the weights and the land impressions, the widths and such, as I had mentioned, were very similar.
So they all contain roughly the same weight, the same, did you say land impressions?
Yes.
And the width of each of those bullets all appeared consistent with one another.
Number 4 I couldn't get a measurement on it because the damage was so severe, but from appearances, that looks to be very similar to 17 and 18.
And as you included here in your report, then, because of those consistencies within the same bullets, did they appear to all be fired from the same firearm?
That was my conclusion, yes.
Referring then to the bottom paragraph of page 1 of your report on States Exhibit 55, you indicated that these were fired copper-jacketed bullets. What significance is there to the fact that these are copper-jacketed bullets?
It's just what the loading was for that particular cartridge.
Okay. And all 3 of them contained that same type of copper-jacketed bullet?
Yes.
Okay. Now, as you've indicated, they were all determined to be consistent in size, design, and weight with either a 38 Special, a 357 Magnum, or a 9mm Luger cartridge. Are those all different types of ammunition?
Yes.
Okay. Now, items number 17 and 18, you indicated reflected 6 lands and grooves with a right-hand twist. What does that mean?
The rifling within the barrel would have, when a bullet is fired down a barrel, it's going to expand and seal itself, if you will, to the inside of the barrel. The pressures are going to push it down the length of the barrel. But as it seals itself against it, it's pushing against, in this case, 6 raised areas. And part of it's pushed into 6 grooves. The pressures that are going on that are pushing, both expanding the bullet and pushing it down the barrel, are forcing the bullet jacket, in this case copper, to take on the form that they've been forced into.
What are you talking about?
Now, I do believe you testified that based on the weight of these bullets, you thought they were probably most consistent with a 38 Special type of ammunition. Is that fair?
That's my experience, yes.
Now, referring then to page 2 of your report, what is it that you've listed here?
What I've done here is taken all that information I mentioned earlier, the bullet weight, well, not so much the bullet weight, but the land impressions, the number of them, and the widths of the land impressions and groove impressions, the number of them, and placed them into a database that, in this case, we have one the FBI puts together. I believe that's what this one's from. We also have one that AFTI puts together. And these are the names that the database spit out based on the information I gave to it.
So then turning to the next page in this exhibit here, what are all these that are listed?
Well, this one happens to be, I recognize this style. This happens to be an AFTI search. They set theirs up a little bit differently than the FBI. And what you have is the search results, the manufacturer, model, and the firearm type.
And so essentially are the remaining pages of Exhibit 55, again, just all of the different types of either ammunition or firearms that were consistent with the general rifling characteristics that you observed on these, at least the 2 bullets, items 17 and 18.
Yes.
So turning then to page 54, Exhibit 54. This would have been the report you authored on April 30th that you've labeled report number 4. At some point then were you provided with a firearm to attempt to do some sort of comparisons with.
Yes,
Is that listed here as item 20 in your report?
yes,
And the description here is a stainless steel revolver with a serial number of 184998. You recall, is that an accurate serial number for that gun?
the serial number is accurate, the description is not.
Okay. And why is the description not accurate?
Well, what I noted, the gun came to me in a bucket. The bucket was full of water, which is how we asked that any submerged firearm is submitted to us. It prevents rust from taking over and destroying whatever we could have worked with. Once I got it out of the water, cleaned up, I noted that the bluing, which is effectively rusting of the metal, but it's done in a controlled environment and deliberate, was worn away down to what I know as it's a condition called the white. That is a unfinished surface of a barrel or of a piece of metal. I was told it was called being in the white before it actually has a painted or a bluing or whatnot applied to it. So stainless steel, I can understand why you could see it like that when you first pull it out, but to me it looked more like a barrel that had lost its bluing, a firearm that had lost its bluing.
The stainless steel description, is that perhaps because there appears to be some silver elements to the gun in color?
It does when you don't have the bluing, yes.
And so when the bluing kind of wears away or kind of fades away, then what's underneath there appears to.
Lands and grooves, pretty similar no matter what firearm they're shot from, correct?
Yes.
So the fact is this is a 38 Special plus P Winchester bullet doesn't really help us much in this particular case, does it?
That's not up to me to decide, but
You didn't draw much inference from the fact that these bullets were Winchester 38 Special plus P, did you?
I wouldn't even have known that. I fired what cartridges that were similar to.
And the 38 caliber firearm could be 357, 38 Special, or 9mm. I think we need to explain to the court exactly how close those calibers are to one another. They're minute in difference, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
And just exactly how small is that difference, sir?
Oh, approximately 2 1,000ths of an inch.
Okay. In fact, I get this wrong all the time, but the 357 can be shot out of the 38 Special or vice versa.
Vice versa.
Okay, so if I have a 38 Special, I can shoot 357 through it, right? Or did I get it wrong again?
You got it backwards.
Okay. So
Let me help you out for a moment. The 357 Magnum is physically longer than the 38 Special.
okay.
If you remember it like that, you know that the 38 Special can be fired in a 357, but not the other way around.
Thank you. Now, you talked about this particular firearm and the trade name Llama. Llama's sold a lot of firearms in the United States, right?
Yes.
And when you buy a Llama firearm, they stamp their name right on it, right?
They may. Yeah.
It's not particularly a high-end firearm, correct?
That is my experience. Yes.
Okay. You inspected this firearm and got the serial number on it and wrote it down, right?
Yes.
Did you look for the trade name on there?
No. I don't remember seeing it on there. I was actually looking at my notes and I didn't have it in my notes.
Okay.
So my practice in that case would have been to do an internet search based on the model name.
Okay.
And that's where Llama came up.
Because in evidence already is the fact that on the barrel is the name Lasser. Is Lasser the manufacturer of that firearm?
That's my understanding. Yes, sir.
Okay, because that list you provided in exhibit, I believe, 55, Lasser makes a Comanche 2,
Yes.
and Llama makes a Comanche 3, right?
Yes, there is a difference there.
What's the difference?
As my understanding, to fire the cylinder, the chambers within the cylinder will only handle a 38 special cartridge. A Comanche 3 is a one that's the cylinder is large enough to hold and withstand the pressures from a 357 Magnum.
So there is a difference between a Llama and a Lasser in this particular circumstance.
I couldn't tell you what it is.
Okay. But your testimony is, after physically examining the firearm, you couldn't tell the manufacturer or the trade name.
Oh, I could tell you what the manufacturer was. The trade name I got from the internet search.
Okay. But looking at the firearm without going to the internet, you could tell me the manufacturer?
Yes,
Okay. And that was Lasser.
yes.
And you were given 3 fired projectiles, but there's been 6 fired from that firearm. That's your testimony?
Well, there were 6 fired casings.
Right. The indentations on the primer from the firing pin, can that tell us anything about this particular firearm?
If there's a firing pin impression on a primer, it will usually fire the cartridge.
But can you then look at that cartridge and then do a test fire and compare the cartridges to say these 2 cartridges were fired in the same firearm?
Yes.
Did you do that here?
No.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Found the cartridge casings in the gun. I didn't have any reason to
You know
believe
what?
they hadn't been
Yeah.
fired in that gun.
They did not. I'm gonna be honest with you, and I really don't want to hear no more. But they did not investigate this case thoroughly, like it was a concern about this particular case of this. I hate to be this way, but if it had been, they don't care. They didn't care in this case, and I'm not the type that want to talk like this. But they didn't put nothing on this case with this young girl. They didn't put it on there, y'all. They didn't put enough interest on it. They didn't put enough on this case. It's just like, okay, she's a black girl. She died. She's mid, so she died or something. Whatever. Let's go. Anyway, that's just. I mean, because everyone I seen allegedly takes the stand, it's not giving enough of nothing. They talking. They not showing proof. This is not supposed to happen. A young girl is in the water and in the lake it with a head turned down and nobody care. A 10-year-old girl, you didn't even go to the man's house. You didn't even do the footprint. I mean, what's going on here? It's ugly. Come on, we care. We want to get the right man. We care about whatever happened to any kids. Y'all didn't put enough work in this case. That's not right.